अस्सलाम वालेकुम everyone. My name is Samar Hassan and I'm the founder of CEO. जैसे कि आप जानते हैं मेरा नाम समर हसन है और मैं co-founder हूँ co-founder नहीं sorry अब now I'm just founder of Epiphany. Epiphany क्या करती है? Epiphany different चीज़ें करती है. It's a creative and social enterprise and we are very big on community building and women empowerment. So smashing it का जो whole objective था या जो मकसद था वो ये था कि हम ऐसी पाकिस्तानी ख़वातीन को highlight करें, उनको सामने लेके आएं जिनके बारे में शायद आपको मालूम नहीं है, but they're very very fantastic and the kind of work that they're doing is really exciting. They're pursuing different fields, they're pursuing different careers, they're really smashing it. So why the name smashing it is essentially it's a version which is better than just breaking the glass ceiling, right? So now we're saying that okay, there are Pakistani women who are actually smashing it wherever they're going. The other idea behind this was not just for women. Obviously, women role models की ज़रूरत होती है. We do want to see, we do want to know that there are women out there who are go-getters and it is possible, right? So we want to set up inspirational models for people and bring them on this particular session. But at the same time, we want to celebrate the ones who are perhaps not famous and celebrate the ones who are famous. So it's a mix of both. Initially, it was supposed to be just one, highlighting the ones who were not so much in the public eye, but now we've realized that, okay, we actually want to highlight the ones who are in the public eye and talk to them about the challenges that they overcame and how did they become who they are in their journeys, in their lives. So today we have a very special guest with us, as usual. I always say that, but that's simply because I do get really amazing women to participate in this session. So today we've got Farah Ali with us, and Farah is going to introduce herself probably better than I will, but very quickly, she is the co-founder and CTO of FreightWeb. She's also the co-founder and board chair at Pakistani Women in Computing. You'll remember that we hosted a session with Muazzama, who is also part of PWIC, and she's also co-founder and president One Good Act. Previously, she used to work for Electronic Arts, Microsoft, eBay, and the list goes on and on. So without much ado, I'm actually going to welcome Farah. Assalamu alaikum, Farah. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Thank you very much. It's super, super early.
Yes, it is very early. I'm
So
used to
thank you
it.
for making time. All right, Farah, so would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us who you are?
Sure. I think you kind of covered it, but yeah, I'm a technologist by profession, by subject matter expertise. I started at Microsoft out of college. That was my first kind of job. I worked in developer tools and moved to more online services, search. That's where I kind of learned machine learning and AI hands-on. Then I moved to e-commerce and retail with eBay. I was there for a number of years working on infrastructure, working on shipping platform, using machine learning in shipping, so shipping science. Moved to gaming, so moved to electronic arts, worked on the platform team, core infrastructure, developer experience, player experience. And then last year, I decided to co-found my own company in logistics tech. So it's called FreightWeb. We raised a 3 million seed round from VCs, and so that's kind of what I'm doing there. I'm a co-founder and CTO.
Hmm. Okay, so we will have questions because some of our audience are actually entrepreneurs. So we will have questions about how you raised money and the whole fundraising process. And just for our audience, I also want to mention that Farah is an angel investor as well. Okay, so from both perspectives, we'll talk to her about that as well. But before we get to that, right? So obviously there is a journey and how you got to where you are right now. And in that journey, I'd like to understand, right? So were you always motivated to do computer science? How did this happen?
Yeah, I think it was more trial and error. It was more about what I wasn't motivated to do. So once you filtered out the things I didn't want to do from the options that we
By
had.
the way, I thought I was the only one who did that, right? My career was the process of elimination as well, right? But anyway, okay, go on. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, like I didn't want to be a doctor. So, there was medical, there was engineering, there wasn't a lot of social science or liberal arts in general when I was growing up. Even if there were, it wasn't clear what you could do with it. So it was either you be in economics or finance or marketing, or you go to like NCA or like some arts college, which I didn't have talent for, but I would have loved to have done that. So, I just sort of picked math and science or areas where I'm good at. And then when I was younger, I mean, I was, I have a younger brother, so we used to play games a lot on the PC. And so I was more familiar with computers. I was more comfortable around it. So, when I saw that that's an option, I decided to pick it.
Let me ask you, what games did you used to play?
So I think back in the day, I played a lot of Golden Axe with my brother. A lot of
Okay.
these arcade games, I guess Space Invaders, everybody's played.
Mm.
Donkey Kong, Mario. But then
Mario.
we played a lot of these adventure games. So I played a
Mm,
lot of like Monkey Island, Space Quest, Police Quest,
mm,
Leisure Suit Larry, Sam and Max, Save the Tentacle, Mist Driven. Like I really
mm,
was really into those kind of plot-based games, and I would actually go and like complete the series. So Police Quest, I think, had like five, and King's Quest is
mm,
like seven. So I would go through all of them, and I'd
mm,
find cheats online when I couldn't figure stuff out and get through it. So
mm,
I really loved playing adventure games.
And then of course when the gaming thing happened at the game at Electronic Arts, what was your role? What would you do over there? Were you also involved in designing?
I was part of the platform team. So the way EA is structured is you have a central platform team. So I was a VP of engineering for one of the service teams, reporting to the CTO, and then there was studios around us. So there was Dice in Sweden that did Battlefield, Battlefront. There was EA Sports that did NBA, NHL, FIFA, and all of that. There was Tiburon that did a part of the sports games as well, and so forth. And then when we acquired studios, like we acquired. Respawn, so they did Titanfall, Apex Legends, which became a big hit. It came from there. And so I was responsible for mostly the interfaces. So, the developer SDKs, the API interface, if somebody wants to provision identity, somebody wants to provision matchmaking, leaderboard stats, how do you provision the client side, but
Mm,
then also the hardware, right? How do you actually
mm,
check out machines and push your bits
mm,
there. I was doing a lot of that. In terms of interacting with the games, I was working on the player experience side. So I got to work with teams where, for
mm,
example, they wanted to push out DLCs, right? Like content, ongoing
mm,
content. So we had tools
mhm,
for that. So I had a tool that would look at sort of spatial telemetry and
mm,
tell you, for example, if you're a level designer in Dice, you can see, okay, somebody's playing here and this map in this mode, and I've got my building here as part of my art, but nobody's going through it; they're going around it, and so okay, that helps them sort of figure out, okay, well, where do I place the assets, how things are
mm,
being used versus how they're intended. So allowing
mhm,
people to run play tests. So that was one where we were interacting very closely with the game team,
mhm,
and there are a couple other things, where I
mhm.
got more deeply with the game
Okay,
team.
considering we are talking about gaming and some of our community members are actually game developers and designers, what
Mhm.
is, one piece of advice or, it could be more than one as well, but really what is the critical advice that you would like to say to impart when you're talking about people engagement and user experience in games?
Yeah, I think the game consumers are very savvy now, right? They want to see um, strong storylines, strong plots. They want to see, they paid for a game, they expected that experience to last for a while. So, when you're actually building out, thinking about the game, think about what content you're going to drop and how you're going to build that. Right? So keep thinking of the live service and think of your game as a live service versus just like I'm making this game and it's 52 hours and then you're done, right? I also think that be very mindful of the loops you build in. I think EA learned a lot of this the hard way around. How do you monetize games? So make it a part of the experience that's more integrated. Always be looking at metrics, be looking at retention, be looking at churn, be looking at average session size, how long does somebody stay with the game, and then if you want to look at monetization, you should be looking at average spend per player, and what your goals are there. Keep pushing out content accordingly, but basically you want to create this lifetime value with the game, and you want that emotional connection. So how are you measuring that sentiment? Are you doing NPS scores? Are you using other ways to get that sentiment? But how are you making sure that you have this loyal audience that you're creating a
Mm.
lifetime value?
Oops, sorry, I accidentally clicked on the wrong button. But look, so I've got a question for you, right? So obviously, Electronic Arts, not enough women, just in general, I think, in the gaming industry. Did you ever feel that you were disadvantaged?
So I think in general in tech, there are
Mm,
maybe I would say 20. 22-25% women in
Hmm.
general on average.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
number gets less as you go up, right? So I was a VP
Yeah.
at EA. There weren't a lot of VPs in engineering, but there were in other disciplines. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that I felt disadvantaged, but I think it's also because I was at that level where I was senior enough, where perhaps I had
Hmm.
more influence and I had more control of my career. But I would say early on, I definitely felt
Hmm.
that, right, where I didn't have enough people that I could go to for advice, or when I was facing a situation, and if it was, if I thought, oh, is this really happening, or is it, am I imagining it, or is this, I it would make me second guess myself a lot, because
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
wasn't always clear. Like when something is, let's say, gender discrimination, for example, right? It's not overt. It's not like somebody will come to you and tell you, I am discriminating against you
Hmm.
based
Of
on
course.
this.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
so you do
Hmm.
need people around you to help you read through those microaggressions or understand how to behave
Hmm.
in certain situations. So I think definitely early on,
Hmm.
not having mentors or role models was a disadvantage. But I would say that there were a lot of allies, a lot of men who stepped up, who
Hmm.
were,
Hmm.
who I said, okay, I can go reach out to this person, who were very helpful to me, and what I realized is that most people, if you go to them and talk to them and ask them questions, are helpful enough and they will want to
Yeah.
give you answers. So I think that was a good learning where, oh, I can actually go and seek out people who I
Hmm.
may not know.
So look, I'm going to step, I am going to spend a little bit of time here, right? Because this is
Sure,
something
sure.
which comes up again and again, and not just only discrimination per se, but just generally also being able to negotiate in a way or navigate careers, right? Even when it comes to negotiating a better salary or asking for holidays, something as simple as asking for time off. I think sometimes women feel that as a barrier and they think that they may be looked upon as non-serious, or there are different constraints. Some of them are maybe self-inflicted, I'm not sure. Some of them are not. Some of them are obviously within the organization that is just set up that way. So what would be some of the strategies which you think are really useful? And I mean, you mentioned, for instance, that you found a pool of allies, but how did it take a lot of courage? What happened? Did somebody else tell you, why don't you talk to this person? How did that unfold? If there is any strategy that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can only tell you in hindsight. I don't think at the time I had any strategy, to be honest, right? Some of
Hmm.
it was luck, some of it was courage, where I was like,
Hmm.
okay, this person knows what he's doing. A lot of it was, okay, I want to be like this person, or I want to emulate this person's career path. And most of those people were men. And so I was like, okay, let me go talk to him and ask him, like, how did he do this, or how did he do that?
Hmm.
But I think you're absolutely right. Like there are these things that happen that are not necessarily, obvious at the time, or we don't actually know how to navigate them. I think that there's a lot more awareness, at least in the US. There's a lot more awareness. There's definitely a lot more push for diversity, inclusion, equality. I am starting to see that trend in Pakistan. I don't know how it is. I haven't worked there in a long time, but I think creating that environment is very important, right? So having a safe space where people can feel like, okay, I can ask a question and I won't be laughed at, or a lot of women who are entering the workplace may not have had other experiences, other internships, or what they have is academic knowledge, whereas maybe some of the male peers who are coming in have had experience. Or I noticed this with coding, right? When I did CS 101, there were a lot of peers who seemed to know it very quickly, and I was like, "What's wrong with me?
Hmm.
Why don't I get it?" And
Hmm.
what I realized is that some of these people had already taken courses before,
Hmm.
had done some of these coding classes before. So it was
Hmm.
just that they were starting here, and I was starting here, right? And like so, then you have to know that to not feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me, and then you know that you have to kind of work a bit harder to get there. um, I think there's also a lot of preconceived notions, right? Like somebody will look at you and make an assumption, and that happens all the time. I've had that where I've had you know somebody in some job be like, oh, you're new here, are you the admin? I mean, there's a lot of these type of things that happen, and so it's this constant sort of underlying assumptions that people are making, and it's not necessarily malicious, or that's not aimed at making women unempowered, but it's more about this unconscious bias. So I think being aware of your own unconscious biases is very important, and and knowing the biases of people around you is important, because once you know that, once you know the weaknesses in the system around you, then you can either work around them, find ways. So I would
Hmm.
say pieces of advice. One is find mentors, find allies, find sponsors. If you don't know, ask somebody. Ask somebody in your extended circle of people. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but find someone who's uh, in their career where you see yourself in 2, 3, 4 years, so that you can rely on them for advice. I think that's one. The second is, um, just be aware of your biases and the biases in your surroundings, so that you can actually not second guess yourself and know that, okay, this is actually happening. And
Hmm.
then the third is, kind of pick your battles. This is kind of a sad thing to say. We should not have to do that. We should be
Hmm.
equally empowered all the time. But depending on the person and the position, you're not always empowered. And
Hmm.
so, well, in a perfect world, I'd love that. I'd love justice and equal treatment for everyone. That's not the case. Then pick your battles, right? Which one? What's important to you? What's going to help you right now from these, four things that are happening?
Hmm.
um and then I would say, like, the last one is, have your own, like, bar. What is not acceptable to you?
Hmm.
What is
Hmm.
acceptable to you? And no, right, like, don't compromise
Hmm.
on that bar or those values.
Yep.
Because you will find the career, you will find the job, you'll find your place. And I tell people this all the time, like, in a
Hmm.
20-year career, 1 year here or there doesn't matter. So at that time, it may feel like the end of the world, but think of
Hmm.
your career as a marathon, not a sprint. And in 20, 25, 30-year career, 1, 2 years here or there don't make a difference. So, play for the long game, don't plan for the short game. I think that's very, very important.
I think that's lovely. Think of your career as a marathon, not a sprint, right? And I think sometimes you're absolutely right. We have that very narrow thinking that, oh my God, if this happens, what will happen? And we'll lag behind. Will we find another job? I think there's a lot of questioning, which constantly we do. Obviously, this is not highly recommended in COVID times. Hello, people, jobs are already pretty less in number. But still, having said that, it has also liberated a lot of people, right? So I keep hearing back from people as well saying, this is the best thing that could have happened because we were in this really bad position and now we don't have to be, right? We can actually up and say, okay, or maybe we've been fired, and that's great because we would not have had the courage to do that, right? So while we're talking about courage, sorry, go ahead. You wanted to say something.
No, no.
Tell
I
me.
was just going to say, and the other thing I've noticed with COVID, especially with Pakistan and my interaction with women there, is because remote work is now more acceptable and it's become the norm. There are a lot more opportunities that open up for women. Women who would not be allowed to go outside the house, found these opportunities that they could work on from home. And so I think it maybe is creating a space where people are seeing, like, women working is more acceptable and remote work is the norm. And so I'm really hoping that that's another kind of, like, silver lining in all of this, that you see more women enter the workforce in Pakistan, and you see them being able to remote work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not just from the women's side who may have some cultural constraints, but also organizations. Because for a very long while, organizations have had the culture that people have to be sitting in front of them or inside the office 9 to 5, clocking those certain hours, and then only they're able to work, right? So I think I mean, yeah, COVID has, brought certain things which should have happened a long time ago, right? Digital transformation, speeding that up, and so on. But, when we were talking about courage a minute back, or a second back. So you took a leap of faith as well, right? When you launched your startup. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, who would have planned to start a company in COVID? So, I mean, there's a lot of things that didn't go according to plan. For me, it was, I was at a point in my career where I could either continue going the corporate path that I was at, and I knew, I'd get to SVP, I'd do this, I'd move here, so I had certain ideas about how I could navigate that. And I just thought, like, if I don't do this now, like, take a moment, breathe, and, like, look at me wanting to do this for a while, starting my own thing, then I probably won't do it, because the opportunity cost is going to be too high. And so I was like, okay, this is it. I want to try this. And so I just decided, and I think that I've second guessed myself many times since then, because it's been an exceptionally hard year, right? It's hard for mental health. It's my whole family is home. I have two girls, remote schooling at the same time. I mean, there's been all of these challenges. In the US, we've had other challenges, other political challenges with protest movements and so forth. So it's been, I think, everything's sort of taken a toll. But I think that it's also been a blessing again in disguise, in which, because of so laser focused and so hands down focused on the business, I didn't have time to worry about a lot of things. So I wasn't actively as anxious about other things because I had this thing to worry about. and the learning has been exponential. So I definitely, everybody who said you do a startup and you learn a lot, like I've learned more in this 1 year. It's now been 1 year, than
Hmm.
I did in my past 5 years combined. So
Hmm.
absolutely been a great learning experience.
When was the anniversary of, when was the anniversary of the startup?
So for me, it was October 21st. I
Aha.
officially quit EA, and I think it was October
So,
22nd. I officially went to the office.
hmm. So follow-up question, was it any time close to your birthday? Is this a birthday gift that you gifted
No,
yourself?
I'm a male. No birthday, so no.
Okay. All right. No, so the reason why I ask is because there's so much resonance in what you're saying. मेरा भी exact यही था, right? So I
Asha.
used to work for Karandas. I was the head of communications, external relations. The hard work was done. The nascent phase was over. We pretty much knew the strategy was there. We had to create Karandas as an influencer. That had happened. But for me, it was more like, gifting it to myself before, was it my 34th, I think, right? So I was like, oh my God, I'm going to turn 34. And then, when am I going to do it? I'm only going to lose more energy with time, or, maybe new responsibilities will crop up. Who knows, right? So there's no better time than now. And even if I don't, even if I fail, simple words, yes, even if I fail, at least I
Yeah,
know how to do the 9 to 5, right? I can go back to the corporate world and do that, right?
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. So now tell us a little bit, right, about COVID, because I think again, because we have entrepreneurs, that may be interesting. So how was your business particularly affected by COVID, and how were you able to, navigate and I don't know, pivot? What did you
Yep.
do?
So our startup is logistics focused. So we work with brokers, we work with shippers, we work with carriers, and COVID impacted supply chain a lot. So capacity in the market is impacted. I think for us, when you're a new business, you do have to kind of go meet people, build that trust, build that credibility. So just not being mobile enough, not being able to go meet people, build new accounts, I think that was a challenge. Um, we when we started, we were very operations focused. We're going to build this tech internally, and then we're going to use our proprietary hardware system, and then we're going to find partial shipments. We're going to combine the two, and we're going to ship these partials and fill up a truck. So we were optimizing capacity, and then our first pivot was, okay, if we're not able to find the volumes here now because of COVID, let's really double down on the technology and start thinking about that as a product externally. And so we did that. So we kind of looked at both our hardware tech and our software tech and sort of packaged that up and said, okay, how do we build this out for enterprises? And how do we build this out for small brokers, small carriers, medium-sized brokers and carriers? So we did that pivot. So our main big, which is a pretty big pivot, is we pivoted more from an operations focus to implement to a technology focus to implement our idea. And I think how that helped is also we were able to really narrow down like the number of people in the company. We're able to kind of really double down and build, build, build. So we weren't as focused on the sales pipeline and all of that because that was is a good time to build it. It's a good time to be heads down and just be coding and doing that.
Yeah, and I think that resonates, right? A lot of startups have actually taken the time to strategize and figure out where are they going with this, right? And a lot of projects, I would say, a lot of projects which are just being shelved because there is never enough time are just coming out in the open and you're working on those. Okay, tell us something, so tell me, how would you describe yourself?
I don't know. I think I'm a very flexible, easygoing kind of person. I love learning. I think I'm a lifelong learner. So I
Hmm.
just like, talking to people and learning about stuff.
Hmm. Okay, very good. How did the shift into angel investment happen?
I think that was more, I was like, I have money and I have some passion for certain areas, and let me, try my hand at this. So it wasn't really any well thought out thing. It was more like I had a friend who was doing the 3D scanner, and I thought it was really cool. And he kind of did it himself. He did like the first 10 versions of it just by himself, and so he was kind of wanting to support. So it was more altruistic, and then it became more of a I want to invest in this because I think this is cool and game changing. And then it
Hmm.
became economic. So because, I was like, oh, okay, this is good. He's seeing this exit strategy. I can make, 20 times return on this. And then, so
Hmm.
that was my first one. And then with that, I started looking at crypto because that was upcoming. I looked at, there was one that was purely just passion based, which is fuchsia shoes. Afsha
Okay.
is somebody who is a local entrepreneur, and she's working
Hmm.
with artisans in Okara. And it was really about, having these kind of
Mhm.
handmade shoes that are also machine. It's like it's a mixture, and it's like keeping that the art of the kusa
Tradition
alive,
alive. Yeah.
right? And then
Mhm.
but making it more modern. So it's more like a ballet flat, and just supporting her. There's another kind of social network um, for friendships, a platonic social network that I thought was a
Mhm.
great idea that I support. So it's mainly been passion projects, but with some thinking of
Mhm.
these could be possible exit strategies. So I'll make my investment
Mhm.
back. But I
Mhm.
didn't look at what, for example, when I'm pitching to VCs, they really look at the addressable market. How big is the market, and how much can you move. I didn't look at that. I didn't look at like having a thesis that I will only invest in consumer goods. I'll only invest in fashion or whatever. So it wasn't that. It's really, I think, the driving force behind my angel investments is just what are my passions and where can I actually have more
Mhm.
hands-on um,
Mhm. Impact
involvement
or
in building
involvement.
something, yeah, and
Yeah.
building something new. Like, and I not
Mhm.
only give money, I give advice, I help connect. So
Mhm.
it's a fun thing for me.
Mhm. Okay. All right. So tell us about the fundraising process. So here you're the funder, you're the investor, and then obviously the tables are turned for FreightWeb. So tell me about that process.
Yeah, it's a pretty hard, pretty intense process. I think we
Hmm.
pitched to 15 different companies,
Hmm.
and I think essentially, you work on your pitch and you keep refining it. You keep taking feedback from every time you've pitched to, okay, what is resonating? And, what really came through was addressable market. I think that's a big one for VCs.
Mhm.
They want to see a big market. They're looking at
Hmm.
your thing and they're thinking huge returns. Anything
Hmm.
smaller, they're not interested in. Then it's not VC scale business. So it
Hmm.
was very important to really understand how VCs think. And then, just educating myself on term sheets and like the whole process. How do you distribute equity and all of that? Venture Deals is a really good book. I think I forgot the author, obviously, but it's a really good book. I think it's like if somebody wants a crash course on, my venture investing and term sheets and all of that, that's a great book to read. Um,
Okay.
and I think personal intros, right? So my co-founder Will had one person he knew who was advising a VC fund. So that intro I think was pretty useful
Hmm.
for us because that got us in with someone who said, okay, if you can find a lead investor, we'll be your backup,
We'll
your
we'll
second
do that.
investor.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
Okay.
also, I mean, it's a lot of the VC world is about who you know and having connections, which is which is the part that is tough for a lot of people if you don't have the connections.
If you don't have the connections, absolutely, yeah. Okay, all right. So you've already described yourself, right? Now tell me about some challenges that you faced and that you either successfully overcame, and if you didn't, that's fine. You failed at overcoming them, maybe, and now in hindsight, you know that okay, you could have done things differently, right? So,
I don't know. I mean, there's lots. I do think that like this. I mean, I would say like from a startup perspective, I have learned that I'm pretty bad at sales and marketing, and and so just having people who are experts at that is very useful. It's
huh?
very good to have.
And no, look, that's excellent, by the way. Can I just take a step back for a second? Guys,
Good.
whoever is listening from the startup world, please stop thinking that you are the best at everything. Okay, I don't we don't want to hear that. That's why we want to see your teams that are complementing one another, right? So I think this is great. Thank you, Farah. Okay, what else? Hmm.
It's like,
Keep
yeah, you're
going.
not a one man, you're not the Swiss Army knife. So know your strengths. I'm good at technology. That's like my sweet spot, my safe space. I'm good at team building. I'm good at rallying people behind an idea. I'm good at structure, and I'm good at thinking through like strategy and vision. But yeah, I think that business development and partnerships, and I think that was very important. Surprisingly, pricing. How do you price your products, and just the what the art and science behind it is something that I think I've gotten better at. But I think that's one area that's, my God, it's so difficult. And I didn't think it would be that difficult. And so really thinking about, you want value based pricing versus cost based pricing, and how do you determine that value, and knowing that, like, you don't just set a price. It's something you have to constantly look at, and you have to constantly think about, and align to your goals. Like, are you trying to grow your bottom line? Are you trying to be cash flow positive? Are you trying to, sustain your own company without going for more funding? So for a startup, there's many other things to look at. A lot of us just tend to give away stuff for free. I think that's a mistake, because you never really get a good sense of what's the value that you're providing, that somebody would be willing to pay something for. So I think from functional perspective, it's that. From like a personal perspective, I don't know. I think my preference is more like I'm more of an introvert, and I think when I chose this career path, I think you asked me earlier, like, why computer science. And one other thing was, it was very comfortable hiding behind a screen and a desk. And when I thought of some of the other jobs, and like, you have to go talk to customers, and you have to present, and you have to give talks like this, like, it never appealed to me. It's so judging.
Yeah, yeah, but you're very good. You're very engaging, by the way, if I may say so.
I mean, I think you're making it
Anyway.
easy, and I think I've done enough of these that, I can
Mm,
put it a little bit on automatic. But I think that those things don't come naturally to me, and are not
mm,
very enjoyable. Like, I have to make myself sort of be
mm,
interested in it. So I
mm,
think
mm,
that's something I had to work hard at. Just teaching myself have to be more comfortable in public speaking and pitching and presenting, like all of those soft
mm.
skills, which I think are not naturally there when you're in an individual contributor role as an engineer. But then as you grow in any career, regardless, you have to be good at those things. It's a policy that you can be a senior engineer, you can be a manager and all of that, and not have those skills. Communication skills are so important. Like, when I look at my kids now, I really focus on that, their ability to communicate effectively, clearly, engage an audience. That's like more than half the battle, half the time, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so I've been a communications person my entire life, even though I didn't study communications. I studied international relations, right? What do you know? But I ended up pursuing stuff in partnerships and resource mobilization and everything, which was just, it's clubbed under marketing. Everything is clubbed under marketing. Okay, so you end up doing everything. Even convincing parents to send their kids to a university comes under marketing, right? So I think, yes, as a founder, that's absolutely important, because you do have to put yourself out there. And when you're presenting to VCs and whatnot, I think that's important. Okay. Tell us about some of your role models.
I mean, I think from on the technology side, I think, Bill Gates for sure. I don't. It's not just, what he's done and accomplished in tech, but just as, how he's then gone on and made a career in philanthropy, and what he's able to do with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Like, that's absolutely inspiring, and I really aspire to, becoming that sort of a person.
Hmm.
Science, I keep seeing Marie Curie. I feel like she seemed like she was really cool, and
Yeah.
I would have I just it's very, very it's just always very inspiring to see, female scientists doing kind of
Hmm.
hard science and pushing through, and being so passionate. I love that. Elon Musk, I think, is another person who I feel like
Yeah,
is,
I think a
you
lot
know,
of us, yes,
yeah, he
do
can be
admire you.
crazy. He's shown himself to be quite crazy recently, but he's truly visionary. Like, the stuff that he's
Hmm.
doing and thinking
Hmm.
about, not just another app, not just another social network. He's really thinking about futuristic things, and
Hmm.
I love that. Right, colonizing Mars, or you know the boring machine, or everything Tesla. I mean, fascinating.
Hmm.
So that's
Okay,
something.
so talking about philanthropy, right? You're also the co-founder and president at One Good Act. Would you like to tell us a little about that and how that came about?
So when I was in Pakistan, I grew up there. When I was in my A levels, and even before, like, I was very active in volunteer work. I used to go to Darul Sukoon and Idara when I was in A levels. It was something that Lyceum, where I was at, we were very encouraged to do that.
Hmm.
And then even before that, I used to go teach at the school Ujala. Since I was a kid, I would be giving tuitions at home. So I sort of always had this germ for sort of giving back. I think it comes a lot from my mother.
Mhm.
She's been running a nonprofit in Karachi for like since the 90s. And I would,
Mhm. Mhm.
also help her, and I would see her do that. So I think
Mhm.
my family is a very service oriented family. They're always sort of, my nani, my nana, they've always done something or the other in the service of the community. So I
Mhm.
think it's just something that I grew up with. And when I moved here, and I felt like, okay, I want to give back and I want to be more involved, not just here, but in causes in Pakistan where I can help. And so I decided to, start a foundation here called One Good Act. And I primarily work with this organization called Al Zora Welfare Association in Karachi, in Punjab, Delhi colony.
Mm-hmm.
We have a high school that we run. We have a need-based programs, and we have vocational training. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then locally, I work on homelessness, and
Mm-hmm.
I work on kind of immigration reform causes, and then advocacy. So a lot of advocacy around, you know, women's rights and
Mm-hmm.
education. Yeah, so it's really my kind of my own thing where I can, again, it's another one where I can look at my own passion projects and be more hands-on versus just donating money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what One Good Act is. And
And
it's a
what about you did?
registered nonprofit in the US. So it's a 501(c), so it's tax exempt. So if you
Mhm.
donate, then you can.
Mm.
It's
By the way,
fine.
on a separate note, I'd love to interview your mother or one of the key people over there who set it up, or,
Sure,
for another program that I do called Impacting Lives, which
sure,
is essentially about people who've, created impact in their lives and why they actually end up doing it and what drives them. So we can talk about that separately, but would love to do that. I don't know if you
absolutely.
know about Sinosa, but we covered Sinosa in that particular,
Sorry, I
that
don't know.
session, and
I
that's a school which has existed for 60 plus years again in Karachi. So I
Wow.
lived in Karachi for 6 plus years, and I think in Karachi that spirit just comes out. It just ubal ubal ke aa rahi hoti hai, right? That's the only way
वाक़ई में, आई थिंक,
to.
और अभी भी हमारे स्कूल्स वगैरह में भी सिखाते हैं, बट जैसे, या आई मीन, आई रिमेंबर लाइक गोइंग टू दारुल सुकून एवरी वीकेंड वाज़ जस्ट
Yeah,
पार्ट ऑफ माय लाइफ, एंड गोइंग टू
yeah, yeah.
Idara was part of my life.
Yeah. Okay. So another question which I wanted to ask you, right? So obviously you had a very inspirational mother, right? You were looking up to her and stuff. What about your father? What sort of role did he have, and did he play a certain role in your, career choices and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so my father probably had a lot more influence on my career than my mother. Like, my mother has been running the nonprofit, but she didn't. She wasn't a professional working woman from that sense. In that, having a like a desk job or whatever. My father was an engineer. He worked with in PIA for most of his career, and I think one thing, because of him, we used to travel a lot, so we would get free tickets, and we could sit in
Hmm.
the cockpit. Usually there was no they would let
Yeah.
extra seating. So most of my travels, I would be sitting in there, and it was, for a kid, that's amazing, right? And so I got that experience. I got to see firsthand, the pilot, the co-pilot, the flight engineer, how they do what they do. So that obviously must have influenced me subconsciously. And then getting access to just a different worldview, right? I used to travel so much as a kid, and I think I saw a lot. I met a lot of different people, and so any of these assumptions that you have as a child, or that people like put on you about, the West or this or that, I mean, I think it helped me think more critically, like think more for myself versus kind of whatever was being taught by a certain viewpoint in school. Um,
Hmm.
so I think those are, kind of subconscious ways that I think my father helped. And he's always very supportive of career choices. He was very supportive of, me wanting to be
Hmm.
in computer science. I remember his O levels, so maybe like, what's the grade over? 10th grade, ninth grade, maybe. It was
Hmm.
95 or 96. And I found this like ad in the newspaper for a space camp, Burak space camp.
Mhm.
And so I went to my dad and I was like, मैंने इसके लिए अप्लाई करना है, मुझे जाना है, मुझे आप लेके जाएं, इसका टेस्ट देना है. So he's like, अच्छा, okay, fine, तुम ये वो कर दो, मैं भर देता हूँ. And then he took me, and it was like this, I forgot where in Karachi. It was like a huge crowd of people, like it felt like thousands of people, a lot of boys, some girls. And then we had to actually write this test, and then they selected like 10 of us from
Hmm.
that test to actually have us then come to Islamabad for this
Mhm.
space camp that lasted like a week. And we had like tents that we pitched, and they gave us classes. There were professors from Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, and there were people from Turkey. I met Pervez Hoodboy there. I met all these other people from like Tashkent and
Hmm.
Uzbekistan and Turkey that I wouldn't have otherwise known. So it's just like this fascinating, weird experience. Like, we were taught how to make rockets, so we did that. We had all these lessons about topics that I
Mhm.
was not learning in school. I wouldn't have learned. So, just things like that, where I was always a very, I think, curious child, and I think he he always encouraged that. Like, I look at it now and I think, oh wow, he sent me to Islamabad on my own
Mm.
when I was, you know, a teenager. Like, that's that I didn't.
That's pretty, yes, of course. And that's, yeah, yeah. That requires a lot of courage on his part, right? Being able to say, okay, it's okay. She'll probably be safe. Because you
Yeah,
never know, right? But
I don't
it
know
takes a
what
lot of
he did,
courage, right? I mean, as
just
a
even the
parent.
fact that he took me seriously, right? Like, I saw something
Mm.
in a newspaper, I said I want to do this. It's that where when your parents treat you
Mm.
like equals, or
Mm.
don't ridicule your ideas, and kind of give you that.
Mm.
I think following that, I had this opportunity to work with a group to actually, you know, come up with a project that could actually be sent in a payload. Like, everybody got like a part of a NASA payload to actually send their project
Mhm.
to space.
Okay.
And so I got to work on that. So I got to work on these really interesting things, like sitting in
Mm.
Pakistan, like in, very ordinary, average intellect and ordinary, average schools. So I do think that I have to credit my parents for allowing me that space to think critically, for allowing me to have those ideas and encouraging me when I had an opportunity, letting me avail that opportunity.
Mm. Okay, so final question, okay? And if you want to say something after that, you're more than welcome. But my question
Okay.
for you is really, what are some of the lessons that you would like to share with other Pakistani women and men, right? Both.
Okay. Yeah, I should have thought about this so and have something
I
like
know
really
this is always
profound
a difficult one, right? Two questions which are difficult. Describe yourself and give the lesson. What
to
lesson do you want? And it's always the last question, by the way.
Yeah, I think so. I think with Pakistani women in computing, right?
Mm.
One thing that I've seen is I've just met so many amazing women
Mm.
in Pakistan, like yourself. There are just so many women doing so many cool things. And so I would say my first thing would be like, just own it, like, you're fantastic, and own it, right? Don't second guess that piece about yourself.
Mm.
And don't be shy of talking about your accomplishments. Be out there and talk about all the great work that you've done. Let people discover, let people have visibility in what you are and what you can do. Because I think one of the reasons that I wanted to start Pakistani Women in Computing, which is, by the way, another nonprofit I co-founded,
Mm.
um, and that's a 501(c) and tax exempt. And the year one, the goal was just visibility. Like, I kept hearing like, "Oh, you're from Pakistan. You don't see a lot of women from there. We don't see a lot of accomplished women from there." I was like, "That's not true. I know a lot of women from there, and they're pretty great. So let's give them some visibility." So we started doing these STEM stories. We just started, like
Mm.
what you're doing right now. We started publishing those. We started, introducing people to different platforms, to tech Jews and to other people, to say, write about them, Vogue grammar. So I think just nobody else is going to know your accomplishments as well as you, and you owe it to yourself for the opportunities that it may present you to talk up your game. I think the second I would say is, for sure, if you can find a mentor, a sponsor, just somebody who is on your side and actively uh, helping you out with your career, do that. As early in your career as you can. It's very important to find somebody who you can count on as a sounding board, or somebody who can give you advice. I would say these two, and they apply across both genders. I don't think it's gender specific advice.
Mm.
Um, I think those two things probably.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I've also, kind of like put that out in the
Yeah.
comments area. So, okay, so look, fantastic having you. If there's anything else that you think of, you can always, feel free to poke me and I'll post that up and say, hey, by the way, Farah had a second thought, had a
Absolutely. Well, I would
had a
love it if you share about PDC, because even though there's a misconception that because it's called Pakistani Women in Computing, it's only for women. It's
Mhm.
started by Pakistani women, and our one of our main goals is to provide more opportunities and more of a visibility
Absolutely.
platform to Pakistani women,
Hmm.
but it's open to all.
Hmm.
And we run some fantastic workshops and webinars. We did our first digital job fair this
Career.
year,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes, yes.
And the first one for Pakistan, which is a big one, and we're now going to do it every year.
Hmm.
And so just come and join that community and get from it what you can. We do a lot of things around
Hmm.
resume workshops and interviewing skills, especially tech skills, whiteboarding skills. So definitely, if you would if you post that, because I think that's a forum that can help a lot of people, and that really was the goal with that. Like, how do we
We're one
build?
of the community partners for PWIC, by the way. So we keep
Right,
posting
right,
up
yes,
stuff. Yeah. So we do that. But of course, we're happy to do a lot more of it because I think that's fantastic, right? Propping up whether it's women and young people, I think, because that's what Pakistan has, right? Besides, of course, all the beautiful mountains and stuff. But that's the
right,
real power that we have, human
real,
beings. So
absolutely, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
look, okay, so don't go away, okay? I'm just going to end the program, but I want to talk to you
All
for a
right.
quick second, okay?
Okay,
All right.
sounds good.
Okay, so
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Farah. Thank you once again. Okay, guys, so this was Farah Ali, and we thanked her officially. Thank you for watching. Obviously, if you didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, you can watch it again. It is live and it's available. So thanks much and Khuda Hafiz. And if you have any questions, feel free. You can write it in the comment box, tag Farah, and I'm sure she can respond. All righty. Bye. Khuda Hafiz.